Breaking news on the new coronavirus vaccine that's supposed to be released to the public very soon. Turns out the company creating that vaccine, Moderna, actually filed for a patent amendment in March of 2019, 9 months before the coronavirus hit. And in it, they claim a need for a patent on vaccine technology because of concern for reemergence or a deliberate release of the SARS coronavirus. And it turns out Moderna may not be able to release that vaccine at all because one of the key delivery systems for that vaccine has already been patented by somebody else. And Moderna, along with backing from the US government, is in violation of that patent. We have the documents to prove all of this. I'm Ben Swan, and this is Truth in Media. Hey guys, welcome to the show, and obviously a lot to get to today. Two major issues when it comes to pharmaceutical company Moderna and the coronavirus vaccine that they're developing. It's set to hit the market anytime in October, maybe even November, according to President Trump. Moderna, of course, has been leading the way on vaccine development. We're going to get into all of that coming up in just a few minutes, but the two major issues we're taking a look at. Number one, the fact that there was a patent amendment filed by Moderna in which they referenced a possible deliberate release of coronavirus. That was done 9 months before the coronavirus or COVID-19 actually hit. And then secondly, the fact that Moderna may not have any right at all to be releasing this vaccine because it turns out the key and core development of the vaccine belongs to another company. And yet Moderna was reportedly fast-tracked by the US Patent Office after they had denied these patent applications for years. We're going to get into all that coming up in just a minute. But before we do, a shout out to our sponsor for this episode, ISE.media. Please check out our new platform if you haven't yet, ISE.media. It's so important that you do because this report, among others that are being censored across the internet, are being placed on our platform for content creators being purged around the country and around the world. At ISE.media, we believe in free speech because we believe that free speech makes society a stronger, better, more informed place. Also, we're running an equity crowdfunding campaign right now to build out this platform. You can be an equity investor in the company. Just go to ISE.media and click on Invest Now. All right, so back to this report. Let's start with the amended patent because this is a very big deal. In March of 2019, Moderna filed an amendment to a patent that they had been trying to get through since 2015. Now, since 2015, they have been going around saying that they needed a patent on flu-like illnesses, possibly SARS-like illnesses. But then, in 2019, they made a very strange amendment to this patent application that had been in place since 2015 and had been rejected since 2015. And that amendment said that they absolutely had to have a patent on this technology in order to fight a possible beta coronavirus, which they said, not my words, but their patent filing says may come about as a result of an accidental or a deliberate release of a coronavirus into the public 9 months before COVID-19 emerged. Once COVID-19 emerged, and this is also very important, Moderna jumped up and said, hey, we are able to fight this, even though in December of 2019, the US Patent Office sent a final rejection of that patent saying you can't have it. But once the coronavirus hit, political forces began to move behind the scenes, and by May of 2020, Moderna was issued a patent on technology surrounding the development of a vaccine for the coronavirus. Now, the story doesn't end there because there's also another point, which is that the patent that they received in May of 2020 for that technology turns out already belongs to another company. Joining us now to talk about all of this and break it down into great detail is Dr. David Martin, a friend of our program and a guy who absolutely does his homework with source documentation. By the way, folks, when we release this episode, if you go to ISE.media, you will find the source documentation for everything we're talking about, so that when the lying fact checkers on Facebook and YouTube and Google and USA Today and PolitiFact come forward and say we're not telling you the truth, you can see that we're telling you the truth with your own eyes. You can read the source documentation for yourself at ISE.media. Dr. David Martin, thanks for being with us. Let's start with the issue of this coronavirus patent amendment. A patent amendment meaning that essentially Moderna filed this amendment to the U.S. Patent Office warning that there may be a beta coronavirus that was either accidentally or intentionally leaked into the human population around the world, and as a result needed to have their coronavirus technology patented. Is that correct? What more can you tell us?
So there was a patent application. The patent application number is 16-368270 for people who actually want to look at the source documentation here. But in March of 2019, the patent application that was pending at the Patent Office for the mRNA vaccine was amended to include a beta coronavirus set of targets of potential application. And in the application itself, the application makes reference to the possibility of a release of a respiratory pathogen, a potential release of a SARS or SARS-like virus. And that obviously predating the official announcement or discovery of SARS-CoV-2 by almost 9 months is not only ironic, but the fact that it was included in a patent application that the Patent Office had already rejected. And it's important, Ben, to realize that Moderna has had a dubious track record with the Patent Office. Most of their applications are rejected for double patenting or for a variety of other reasons. But in this particular case, they took a patent application that had already been rejected and decided to amend that application on the 12th of May 2020. That particular patent and a couple others in its family ultimately were issued through a fast track issuance. But yeah, there's something extremely odd and untoward about the fact that in March of 2019, they amended an application specifically to make sure that they had included a beta coronavirus target as one of the therapeutic indications for their patent.
March of 2019, you had a rejected patent on essentially developing a vaccine for a potential either intentionally released or accidental release of a coronavirus. In December of 2019, we had a contract that was signed between the NIH and Moderna to essentially begin developing vaccines using this specific kind of technology that creates these artificial spike proteins. Then going into 2020, once the coronavirus kind of emerges in late December and January of 2020 now, we now see Moderna being pushed to the front line, as you said, because of a relationship with millions of dollars in funding coming from the NIH and essentially from U.S. taxpayers. Let's call it what it is. Taxpayers essentially subsidizing Moderna's development of this. And not until May of 2020 did they even have a patent approved on this technology, which again, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't even developed by Moderna. It was developed by scientists at the NIH who have filed their own essentially royalty patents on this technology. Where am I getting this wrong?
No, you're getting the entire storyline right. And it begs the question, how is it that a company who very clearly did not have the legal right, and they did not have the contractual right, they didn't have the license right, and my earlier point, they had illegally procured patents around the mRNA vaccine technology without making reference to any of what they report in their financial statements of, and the most recent report in September 30th of 2019 was that Moderna had $187 million of federal grant funding and private grant funding that was directed at this technology, none of which is acknowledged as it is required to be in their patent applications. $187 million of US taxpayer and foundation grants that they had poured into the technology, and somehow or another, despite the fact that they failed to follow the law, they failed to actually have a proprietary right that they could represent as theirs to sell or to use for the federal government contracts that they were entering into. Despite all of those things, they were pushed to the front of the line by NIAID and Anthony Fauci, who desperately wanted NIAID to not only win the kind of the moral victory of having a front-running vaccine, but more importantly, the economic victory, because NIID, to your earlier point, has an enormous amount of the core technology patented and issued to themselves. So this is a situation where the horse that was being bet on, Moderna, is actually not even qualified to run in the race.
Moderna has seen this unbelievable skyrocket into the stratosphere in terms of company profile, investment flowing in to the company from going public. They're trying to raise several $billion. And as that's happening, the top 5 executives at Moderna have actually turned around and sold over $100 million in their own stock, which that alone seems very strange, that a company, as it's on the rise, that the top 5 executives would start selling stock. We've actually reported on this for several months, but now comes word from you that essentially the core technology, yes, NIH has a lot of this technology, but there is at the core of this technology, not only the inability to patent, but essentially patent infringement by Moderna and the NIH on another company. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is an interesting, the lipid nanoparticle, which is once again the kind of the envelope in which the mRNA vaccine is delivered, if you want to think of it as a very simple metaphor. The lipid nanoparticle is something that was patented and ultimately licensed by Moderna from a very bizarre custody battle on the core technology between 2 companies in the Pacific Northwest around British Columbia and the Vancouver area, some affiliations across into the state of Washington. The 2 companies, Acutis and Arbutus. Acutis is the company with whom Moderna developed a relationship. The company, unfortunately, was founded by and conducted licensing activities with Moderna through only a single individual who had been pushed out of the company Techmira. Techmira was the foundation company out of which Arbutus came. And when he got pushed out, he formed another company and licensed some of the lipid nanoparticle technology to Moderna. The problem is, under that license only covered a series of documented and established vaccine development kind of in process, and did not include any of the vaccines associated with the SARS vaccine that we currently are talking about. So the core technology, which was important enough that Moderna had to license it, was not licensed for this use, which means that they're not legally entitled to have access to the technology. The CEO, which, you know, if you look at what he said on CNBC, the CEO has said that the schedule of stock sales was something that they put in place around the IPO. But if you go back and you look at the IPO and look at the fact that somewhere between the IPO in 2018 and this bizarre amended patent filing in March of 2019, the probability is very high that these individuals had internal knowledge that there was a priority going to be placed on their technology, and that was going to put them in line for a huge amount of federal funding, because you wouldn't otherwise have this very odd amendment to a patent that had been, as I said, been prosecuted in a series of applications beginning in 2015. You wouldn't have had all of that information going on, and the insider knowledge, and this is very important, the insider knowledge that said they knew that they were being positioned to deal with a beta coronavirus vaccine 9 months before the public was told there was a issue around beta coronavirus, just raises an entirely odd set of questions, which unfortunately don't look good when you have the executives selling their stock.